Okay, how's everybody doing this evening? Yes, my name is Kent. Channel EOS San Diego. Blog producers are EOS San Diego 1. If you'd vote for us, we really appreciate it. We're trying to get up in the top 90, so if you could help us do that, we'd really appreciate it. I want to talk a little bit tonight about the obvious thing that everybody's probably been watching today, and that's the big fall in the EOS price. I mean, it's down, I think, almost 25% in the last 7 days. We're back to like 4.6 billion market cap. They raised 4 billion originally, so just a slightly over what money they raised almost 2 years ago. So really, price is disappointing. I've been talking a little bit about this the last couple nights, how there's probably a little bit of disappointment in the community. There's probably a little disappointment in how things have been going because it just hasn't really been progressing as fast as we like it. And of course, that's what I've been talking about. And obviously, price is reflecting that right now. The other thing I want to really mention about the price is, and I was a little bit concerned about this right after the announcement, was that retail investors are not buying EOS. I don't think retail investors are buying any cryptocurrencies right now. This is institutional investing. So what you have right now is you have big institutions buying Bitcoin, driving it up to 12,000, buying EOS, driving it up to $8. You have institutional buyers. We're not in a retail market right now. Retail market, we'd be at $10, we'd be at $20, we'd be at $30. This thing would be skyrocketing, especially with the news and with all the things going on. So really right now we haven't reached a level of bringing the independent person back into the market. The independent person has not entered the market yet. I was hoping by this time that they would. And I was hoping by this time, with the market run up and things looking like they're turning around, that we would see a lot more of the individual people buying cryptocurrencies. And I don't think that's happening right now. I think what you're seeing right now is you're seeing institutional investors. Of course, the way institutions invest is they buy and then they sell. And then they buy back and then they sell and they buy back and they sell. And they're going to work the market. And that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing the market being worked. I mean, there's always something, and in fact, this is why I never invest in gold, and I never would invest in gold, because the gold market is constantly being shorted by what they call a naked short, which means it's somebody that never really owns the gold, somebody that's never going to buy the gold, somebody that never even has to place the order, or they don't even try to fill the order. All they do is they just sell the commodity. Once they sell the commodity, it scares the market, and the market goes down. And we don't know what's going on with EOS. A quick story, kind of funny story. When I was a young man and a stockbroker, and I was a penny broker, much like most people have watched the movie The Wolves of Wall Street. That was what I did. I wasn't running around doing drugs and doing the things they were doing on that movie. Of course, that movie was made for television, for Hollywood, so it was made for people to really watch it and entertain them. But you know, it was somewhat based on truth. And the one thing that the movie did portray very well is the way these people are very, very, what would you say, over the top in the way they acted and worked and what they did. And when I was a young broker, and of course I think making a few $1,000s a month, just starting out, cold calling, building a book, not really having too many clients. There was a guy in our office who was making, at that time, and this is probably the early 80s, $80,000 to $100,000 a month, which was an enormous amount. I mean, that'd be like a couple $100,000 a month right now. I even remember his name. His name was Joe Ross. I doubt that he's still out there, but maybe he is. If he is, he's quite a bit older than I am, so he'd probably be a very old man right now. The guy's name was Joe Ross, and he was making $80,000 to $100,000 a month. And at the time, a lot of us were even making, and I was actually making a couple grand a month, which at that time was not bad money for somebody that's just fresh out of college and starting out, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And I was just barely in the business, hadn't really made too many contacts, didn't know anybody, so I was doing all right. But anyway, they threw a party for this guy because he was making so much money for the firm. And he threw this huge party for this guy. And I remember at the party, his wife showed up. His wife didn't seem very happy. In fact, she was very unhappy. And she seemed really irritated with the whole process of the party for Joe. And I was sitting there and I was watching this, and because I was just like thinking the guy was the greatest thing in the world, and how can I do what he's doing? How do I be like Joe? But I realized his wife wasn't so impressed, so it kind of started making me think maybe this wasn't so. Something else might have been going on here. And not only did his wife wasn't overly impressed with the party and overly impressed with Joe, she was driving a really bad car. I mean, like a really bad car. I mean, she drove up in some sort of old, I can't even remember what it was, but it was an economy. It was old. It was worn out. It was dilapidated. It just barely drove, and you could it's just a horrible car. And I don't think she looked like she was dressed very well, and I don't think she had nice stuff. And I could tell she was irritated. So right away I started questioning whether Joe was really making the kind of money that he was making. And sure enough, the longer I was there and the more I started figuring out, Joe was your classic guy that put in a trade that never got filled. So in other words, Joe would go, I mean, we were holding our own inventory. So we were market makers in the particular petty stocks that we were dealing with. So Joe would go in and make a $40,000, $50,000 commission sale. The stock would go out for a number of days. I think at that time it was like 6 or 7 days. Then it would come right back in the inventory. But in the meantime, it looked like Joe made a huge commission. Looked like Joe was making big bucks. I mean, stock went out, stock came in. But we never talked about the stock that came in. We only talked about the stock that went out. And they never really discounted his commission because Joe was a good salesman. And Joe made the rest of us try a lot harder because we thought, wow, if Joe could make that kind of money, we can make that kind of money. So I don't think the brokerage ever wanted us to know that Joe's trades were all fake. None of them were real. They were all fake. And the only way I knew that they were fake is because I could read his wife, and I saw his wife wasn't like looking like a woman that's husband was making $100,000 a month. She looked more like a wife of a husband that was making about $1,000 or $2,000 a month. And plus, she didn't like all the attention and accolades that he was getting. I think she knew it was all smoke and mirrors. So anyway, it's kind of what goes on with these markets too. What goes on with these markets sometimes is it's not really what you think it is. Things run up, things run down, and you don't know who's running it up and you don't know who's running it down. And you don't even know how much legitimacy there is in the market. You really don't. You really don't know. The one thing I would say is don't be getting too excited right now about the market dropping, because this could be very temporary, and this could be something where huge institutions are buying and selling, and not only buying and selling, could be doing a lot more than that. I really don't know, but I'm just telling you. From my previous experiences, you can't always trust the markets. You can't always trust those people that are involved. We need the retail market back. We need the retail person back. We need the individual back. We need the people that are just buying for, a few hundred EOS or 1,000 EOS or 500 EOS. We need those people back in the market. And I think they're coming back into the market, and they're coming back in a big way. Let's say it's not the retail market driving. This is institutional markets. Institutional markets drive up, markets drive down. Sometimes you don't even know if they're real or not, and sometimes you don't know what's really taking place. Much like my friend Joe Ross in the early 1980s, who was making $150,000 a month or whatever it was. I can't even remember. When his wife was driving around in a junky, beat-up old car. And we were throwing parties for him at the office, and she looked like she was ready to strangle him. So anyway, just note of caution. I don't think the market's going to stay here very long. $4 billion is pretty close to what they raised. I don't know what they got left, but I don't think they've spent all their money, and I think it's a pretty good buy right now. So anyway, stay tuned. I think the market could be taking a rebound very soon. Appreciate you watching.